Today I'm going to be talking about the Ooku, the Inner Chambers, the Netflix series. I absolutely love this series. I think it's great because it's based on alternative history where instead of men being in charge, it's females, and it's you have a disease, the red face smallpox, that basically decimates most of the male population. Those who are of younger ages, 14 to 15, I think it was it 12. It was 12 to 15, and a bit older. But in rarer cases, it can affect slightly older men as well. It's a great, it's a great animated series based on the manga of the same name, and it it's good. I know I'm repeating myself already, but you can you see how different things are in where a male population is smaller and a female population takes over, and it shows stark contrast between the male species and the female species. Yeah, it's the women are able to obviously take over a lot of male predominated jobs. Like obviously you have a female that becomes shogun. A lot of the women take over businesses, become feudal lords, but end up dress up and disguised as men, because normally them roles are done by men. Women take over local businesses, markets, become farmers and do all the manual labour jobs that normally men would have done. Yes, they are more than capable of doing it, but what the show does show is, even though they are capable of doing it, they're not as physically capable because, well, a lot of the time, not all the time, a lot of men are physically stronger than women, but you do get cases where women are obviously much more physically stronger than men, and it shows that even though they have taken over the roles that the men would predominantly do, they have to kind of compensate for their less physical strength. Where you see it later in the show, they get machinery to make the work easier, especially those on the farms, to help them harvest their crops so they can feed not only their families but their local villages and the local population. The disease that decimates the male population, the red-faced smallpox, it obviously is based on actual smallpox, but I think because it's a red colour, it makes it look, to me, 10 times worse than regular smallpox. But maybe that's just because it's just the red colour in nature that makes it look worse than what it is. It decimates the male population and kills young men in quite in quite quick successions. I say, like, today you can contract it Monday, by Tuesday, Wednesday you're dead. So it's quite severe and quite quick to killing people. It ends. I know they do say it ends up wiping out that much of the local male, or the male population, that you end up with, for every 5 women you end up with 1 male, which in reality in some cases, I think in some countries that might not be so high, but you do get it where you do have sometimes more females than males. You may get that in some animal species, or I'm completely making that up. Not 100% sure. That would actually, no, that would be true in terms of fishing. But that's obviously when we're fishing for food. So the sh- the show is based in Edu Castle, if I remember correctly. So, from what I've briefly looked up, obviously it's based on truth to an extent, I think, where you'd have female concubines of the shogun in Edu Castle who were there for the purpose of the shogun, whereas in this one, the shogun is a female and she has male concubines, but and they're there to obviously work, and some of them are there to breed with the shogun to try and help save the male population. The show can be quite brutal. I mean, you have it's an 18, but it does depict, slight older men taking advantage of younger men, coercing them into sex, or if they're not going to coerce them and it ends up, I guess, to some point somewhat consensual. I guess it really depends on the individuals. Other times it's just rape. That they do show, I can't remember, it's one of the episodes, they do show you with one of the new guys and how they want to initiate him away into the Ooku, is to basically, there was three of them, one of him, and they were basically going to rape him. I mean, it's fucked. It's so fucked. But you get shit like that where there's a power dynamic, and it's basically those who are there live, work, and die in the castle. You don't go out. You don't have no contact with the outside world really anymore. Your previous life is non-existent. You, in effect, if they basically kill you off, let the family know that you've succumbed to like an illness, i.e. the red-faced smallpox or something else. You've officially died, but then they've just rebranded you into a whole new person. So you have a whole new life that starts in the old there at those. At times it's those who were there for the pleasure of the shogun, or those who were just there to work. I think they're what they were saying, but what in reality is the population. I think they were rumoured to be in the thousands. I think it was 3,000, when in reality it was only in the hundreds. It's structured. The structure in it is very, very, very strict. The outfits, like the kimonos and that they wear, I think, to me visually are absolutely stunning. But then you get that in reality with kimonos. Stunning. They are absolutely stunning to look at. But you can see that even though the male population has declined, and obviously females have now taken over the male-dominated roles, they can be just as brutal as what, like the female shogun can be quite as heartless and brutal as a male shogun would be. And I think at times with things, whether it's in fiction or in reality, is people tend to forget that is females can be just as bad as males can be. When people end up with, it's like, as the saying goes, absolute power absolutely corrupts. Does the shogun have absolute power? No, but in terms of the castle, yes, pretty much absolute power. At times it's quite shocking because you see the brutality. I mean, okay, yeah, you do get to see the flashback of before she becomes a mother and how she was raped herself, and rightly so, she killed her perpetrator. As far as I'm aware, it's justifiable. in terms of an animation, in fiction, yes, it's justifiable. In reality, in a way, it's justifiable, but obviously, you have people's morals and laws and all that bullshit to an extent. But it's very, if you want, it's like the structure is can't even speak now. It's like a military structure. Those at the bottom are at the bottom. Yes, you can obviously work your way up. Yes, there are ways to, if you want, fuck over other people so you can work your way up the hierarchy. But you get that really in anything, where those who want to move up will do whatever they can to fuck over other people so they can move up in the world. You get that in anything. If you have something that I want, and if I'm in a scenario where I can, I will fuck you over, and if I have to dispose of you to then take your place. That's happened throughout real life, in history. Those who wanted to become, say, Emperor of Rome disposes of the previous emperor. Or they'll just dispose of everyone else in front of them until they can get there to dispose of the emperor. Had that in Egypt, when you had, say, like those who would just say maybe try and dispose of the pharaoh, but I don't. My ancient Egyptian history is not so good, but you definitely get that more so in ancient Rome. There were plenty of people, especially senators, that obviously want to be the emperor. Again, it's a human dynamic of power and greed. You want all that power, all that wealth and luxury. You want it for yourself, and it can create quite a fucked up government, because you don't know who to trust, who not to trust. Back then, the person that you've been close with for years, say your best friend or even your own brother or father or whatnot. 1 minute, your family, the next thing you know, he's got a knife in your back. Shit happened back then. Does it happen now? No. Well, in terms of government, no. Depends really on the country you're in, but again, I divulge. Yes, for quite a while, the shogun was pretending to be a male. Only the select few people knew that the shogun was really a female and not a male. And if I remember, they never actually announced it that her father had actually died, so she was still pretending to be her father. But anytime you'd have all the lords and all that turn up to pay homage and respect to the shogun, and obviously she's behind her, not shield, like a wall, so you don't gaze upon the shogun. It was a male, so it was a male voice to obviously give off the illusion that the third shogun was still alive, when reality, if I remember, he succumbed to red-faced smallpox. And the technical fourth shogun, not official, because she made it so that she wasn't officially the shogun, because she says that she's just holding that place, and all the other lords are just holding their place as the, say, head of the family or head of the business, and in her case, head of the shogunate, that they're just holding them places until they have male successors, until either they somehow have as many kids as possible to try and bring back up the population, especially the male population, or the red-faced smallpox dies out and it's not a prevalent disease as it is. Forget what the the guy's the guy that the shogun ends up falling in love with, he was a monk, and they ended up forcing him to denounce his Buddhist ways. So he ended up staying in the Ooku for the rest of his life. And I can't think for the life of me what title he had when he arrived in Edo. Oh, that's going to bug me. Let me see if I can quickly look it up. So you see obviously how he's living his life is, you know, he's going around trying to help as many people as he can, because that's part of his Buddhist vows, to help as many people as he can, until he ends up coming up dead to, I'm trying to think, was it to pay homage, to announce himself? I'm trying to think what it is. To, obviously he ended up announcing himself as what he was, so he could officially declare himself, until they ended up, because a lot of the men in the Ooku are basically young, extremely handsome men. Who are young, handsome men, and that's how, and they're the ones that are kept, and those who are picked end up becoming, say, concubines, especially those who end up sleeping with the female shogun to continue on the bloodline of the Takagawa clan, to obviously keep them in power. Now, where is it? I'm trying to see. No. Still, I'm trying to find it. I know I'm getting a bit distracted. It's becoming a bit boring. Yeah, so he ends up going there to announce himself of what he's become in terms of his Buddhist temple, and they try to persuade him and to stay in the Ooku for the rest of his life, and he's very strong in his beliefs, and you know, they bring young girls in to try and seduce him. Again, he sticks to his vows, his Buddhist vows that he's taken, and him, the guy, the younger monk that he's traveling with, I don't remember if there was a third, and again try to use young beautiful girls to seduce him. It doesn't work, so obviously drastic measures are taken. Yes, there was 3. So drastic measures were taken, and I think it was the samurai who were outside when then went into the, and basically just like gave him an ultimatum. It's like, look, you will sleep with these wenches, as they call them. You know, you will sleep with them whether you like it or not. Obviously, he doesn't accept that and sticks to his Buddhist vows until they end up killing the 3rd monk that he's traveling with, until they end up killing him, to put that fear in him. It's like, look, you have no choice. Whether you like it or not, you're sleeping with them. And it puts him in a very, very difficult position. As does he give in to their demands to spare the lives of the people, to the monks that he's travelled with and the young girls that he's with? or does he still refuse stick to his vows and in other words not allow them to be killed, but they end up being killed as a result of his refusal. So they do kill one of one of the girls. She ends up getting killed. And I think that because he's so young and he's quite inexperienced in his role, he eventually gives in to spare their lives. It's, it's kind of a catch-22 if you wish. He's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. If he doesn't do it, they're all killed. If he does, he's breaking his celibacy and he's broken his Buddhist vows. That's something that you're going to get in real life, is you're put in a do or die situation. I think the vast majority of people would give in. Especially when you've seen, two young people, they're like 20 and younger, probably like 18 to 20, when they're killed in front of you. That mental trauma will push virtually the vast majority of people over the edge. There have been times throughout history where people have been put in situations like that and have stuck to their guns. And, they've stuck to their guns. All those around them were eventually killed. Said person was then eventually killed. Because it's those who are doing it, it's like, well, we've killed all those around you. You're still refusing to give in to our demands. Fuck it, we give up. We're not going to try wasting our time and resources on you. We'll just dispose of you because it's easier. So he eventually, he gives in, breaks his celibacy and breaks his vows. So he ends up having to grow out his hair and adopted the customs of the Ooku for the rest of his life. And he's like, well, what about my family? What about the temple where he's come from? He's like, what about everything that I've just had? And they were like, well, we've already sent word out that you've unfortunately perished. You've died. You've already been replaced. You no longer exist. You're now here for the rest of your life. It doesn't really tell you how long in the show. I mean, before obviously they break him. It doesn't seem to really tell you how long it takes for them to break him. It looks like days. It could be. I think really it's. What do they do? I think you're probably looking at least a week or two. He was only supposed to be in Edo from Kyoto, I think, for a day or two, but they ended up trying to get him to stay longer. It was like, look, stay a bit longer, and he's like, look, come on guys, this is getting fucking ridiculous. I've come here out of respect and like I'm supposed to do to pay my respect and to announce myself to the Shogun. Now you're basically taking the piss. I've got to get back. I've got duties to attend to. I've got a family to go back to and I've got a lot of shit that I've got to get onto. Yeah, it takes a while. But then it's like, look, you can't go really out of your room. You can't leave. You can't do nothing. It's basically his room becomes a mini prison. At that point, yeah, obviously, that's where the penny starts to drop. Like, okay, there's clearly something wrong here. I've come here, say, for a day or two, but they keep begging me, oh, stay a bit longer. No, there's no worries. You can do this, you can do that. Until obviously their true motives come about, and he ends up learning the real reason why he's there, and his actual fate is, you're here, mate, for the rest of your life. I guess there are probably some people that wouldn't mind it, especially because those who are from poorer backgrounds see it as, well, I can go here, have depends on who you are and where you rank. I can have a somewhat decent life, make decent money, and I can send it back to my family to, help them to get by and to survive. Whereas others are, I'm sure that, so others are forced into it, others take it as a last resort, I have no choice type scenario. You see where, because it's alternative history, poorer families are pimping out their sons to females, obviously because the male population is low, so they're pimping them out, one, so they can make money to survive, and two, they're pimping them out for their seed, as they say, to try it so the females can have children, have a family of their own, and to see if they can somewhat try and revive the male species. It is fucked, but it's basically just flipping the script. You get that a lot of the times, especially now in countries where families are pimping out their daughters, and in some places we're talking like young ages, children, where they're getting pimped out, into prostitution, sleeping with fuck knows how many people just to get some money so their family can eat for the night, or say have a room for the night. It's a fucked thing in reality. Is it ever going to change? Most definitely not. Definitely not in my lifetime. Probably not for a good few 100 years, if you probably want to be a bit cynical and realistic about it. But it shows you that as well. But then you get, obviously, differences in terms of your male prostitutes. You have those right in the heart of Edu, your luxurious, say, top of the range prostitutes, if you wish, who look good, they smell good, they're disease free, they're clean, healthy, and they can charge higher rates. But then they also show you the bottom of the food chain, those who have got, say, mental problems, physical problems, disease up the wazoo, unhealthy as anything, virtually on death's door, those who are, say, a bit older, and other, and we're talking like dirt poor. So you get those who are, say like your high class escorts, and in those who are just, if you want, crack addicts. It's fucked. And you can see, obviously, there are people that go there and are like, nah. I mean, like women who go to us like, look, I'm desperate, but fuck me, I ain't that desperate. Some of these fuckers, even just by looking at them, you're probably going to get like a fucking STD. Just by looking at them. I mean, shit, even though it's animation and I'm looking at it through Netflix, even there I'm like, oh, fuck this, even I'm going to get an STD just by looking at it. And, they do show you that there are some men who do sell their bodies into, obviously, prostitution just for their seed. They don't mind it. They don't mind, say, oh, tonight I'm going to go with this woman, tomorrow I'm going with another one, whereas the next day I'm off with her in the morning and her in the evening. You know, they don't mind it because it's like, look, I get sex, probably with some beautiful women, and I get paid for it. You know, they don't mind it. There are others where it's like, look, I hate it, I have no choice, but if I want to eat tonight, if I want my family to eat tonight, I got no choice. And you do see that later on in a farming village. The woman in charge, she comes back and her brother's, you know, putting on his disguise, which is to me reminded me a lot like a fucking ghillie suit. He's gone out and it's like, oh, are you with her tonight? And it's like, oh, are you with so and so tonight? And he's like, nah, she's been knocked up, so I've caught a break, so I'm going with another one. He's like, and he's glad that obviously she's been knocked up, so he gets a bit of a break. Now, going back to the Ooku, the monk that ends up basically being forced against his will, kidnapped into this place, when he first comes across the Shogun, Jesus, does she hate him? She beats the shit out of him. I mean, yeah, other men there are jealous of him because, you know, he's intelligent, quite intelligent, and he's, you know, very handsome compared to others. And even though, yes, he has broken his vows, he still carries the values that go along with it, really, for the rest of his time. It's still, yeah, he still carries that. Yeah, over time, we're talking, you know, months to like probably a few years at the time that he's there. He does change, and it, in a way, I guess it matures him because it's so fucked up. It changes him, but it doesn't change him, I guess, at the core, because he still carries his values to an extent, despite breaking his vows. And in the beginning, you know, the Shogun, she beats him. If I remember, like, she takes a lot of her anger out on him because she has a lot of her father in her. She's quite a lot like her father, the third Shogun. And it shows you, like, you know, she was taken from her family and put into it, and her family were killed. But if it's she was taken, if I'm remembering correctly, she was taken because she was the illegitimate child, if I remember, of the third Shogun, and therefore she was the technical successor to him, because I don't think he had a son, or if he did, I can't remember if he did. He died of red-faced smallpox because, again, he was a young male, and it predominantly goes for young males. So she ended up the technical successor because I think her mother was a concubine to the Shogun, and the poor girl, again, quite rightly, has one fucked up childhood. You know, one minute she's there having a happy life with her mother and father. Next thing you know, this old witch comes along and takes her away, and then you know, she watches her dad, quote unquote, get killed, and then she, even though she doesn't see it, she sees the blood stain and can kind of hear it of her mother being killed. You know, that's going to cause PTSD for fucking anyone. Because, you know, one minute you're a happy-go-lucky child, the next thing you know, your family's been fucking slaughtered right in front of you. You know, just because some old witch has turned up. Oh, my God. The one that takes it, fuck me. God, I detested that bitch. I was so glad watching that cunt die. And the moment she fucking fell wheel and was like, you know, she's basically out of action, as they're like, God, is this bitch gonna die? And it's like, right, okay, we're getting it, and no, she's not dead. Next episode, and it's like, fuck. And I'm sitting and I'm like, God, can this bitch just die already? And again, she continues. And it's like, Jesus Christ. And then eventually she succumbs to it and dies. And it's like, oh, thank fuck this old bitch is dead. But going back to the young monk with the shogun, yeah, their relationship in the beginning was, he was obviously doing whatever, he was doing everything that he was instructed to, while she was beating him, and if you wish, she hated him. And then he was then trying to prove himself amongst the others when he went for samurai weapons training. Was there where, you know, where he was immediately put into it and was like, right, okay, you're gonna go up against one of our best, and he bested him. You know, which is obviously quite cliched. You know, you bring in a new monkey, and he immediately takes out chief monkey. Shit like that is a bit cliched, but you know, it happens. But you know, there are times that does happen where the underdog fucks the champion. You know, that's happened again, where it's like, say, boxing for example, the underdog fucks the champion. That happens. So as there is like, right, you've got to do your overhead strikes 500 times, but he's like, obviously, you know, the best of the best do 1,000. Then he's like, okay, I'll do 1,000. And you know, quite rightly, everyone's like, the hell are you talking, mate? You're gonna do 1,000? It's like, bitch, you've just turned up and you'll think you're gonna do 1,000. I mean, fuck me, he does. I mean, that training is brutal. 1,000 of like the same perfect strike, 1,000 times. Jesus, I think realistically, unless you've got some strong mental, you know, if you're strong mentally enough, or if you've got that physical capabilities, you will be able to do it. The vast majority of people won't even get close to the 1,000 because you're going to give up. I know for a fact I would. I'd probably get to like fucking 30 and be like, nah, I'm done, mate. You know, I don't have the physical capabilities to continue doing 1,000 strikes, doing it the exact same way until, you know, the same perfect strike from back to front. You know, if you wish, say like if you were gonna strike and cut a coconut in half, or if you were gonna, say, behead someone, you know, you're doing that 1,000 times. As I said, me personally, I'd probably get to about 30 and go, fuck this, I'm done, I'm knackered, going to bed. But he went through 1,000, and yeah, quite rightly, physically, it destroyed him. Yes, the instructor was impressed, but I mean, at the end of the day, who wouldn't be impressed? Whether you like the guy or not, the fact that he doesn't what he said he was going to do, you have to be impressed. You know, so he does his duties, he does his training, and then he ends up working his way up the ranks. Then he ends up with his own servants. Was it him? I think it was him that, again, the room that he was in when he ended up besting the guy in the samurai training. You know, others come to, you know, assert their dominance and to basically put him in his place, with the three of them, you know, basically going to beat him and then rape him. He fights him off and he grabs a sword and draws it, which at that point he's not allowed to. You know, not even just to grab the way, you know, he's not allowed to kind of defend himself like that, but obviously he defies it all. I mean, realistically, when push comes to shove, you're gonna fucking defy orders. You know, even if it's gonna come back and bite you in the arse, you're gonna do it, because it means if you don't, you're gonna have 3 people, you know, end up towering over you, probably overpowering you, and the three of them are going to end up taking turns and raping you. You're going to do it. You're going to grab the weapon and you're going to kill him. I'm sorry, but you know it's going to come to her as there is like, either I allow it to happen or murder. Straight down. Gonna fucking beat you and I'm gonna kill you. Possible just slice you, or I'm gonna decapitate you. Either way is satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. Whereas there are others who in the Ooku just allow it to happen. They just allow themselves to basically be overpowered and raped. They just accept it as this is just the way it is here. You know, there's not really a lot you can do about it because, you know, you can't really go against the system. If you are going to go against the system to quite a way, you're going to be killed. So again, it's a kind of, I do put up a fight, I could potentially be killed for, if you wish, a mini rebellion against the way that the system is. Or that's damned if you do, and if you damned if you don't, is I'll just succumb to it and allow, three probably like slightly older men to take advantage of you and rape you. You then have to carry that shame and guilt around. Yes, it's not of your doing, it's not of your choice, and it's a goddamn horrible thing to happen. But there are those who are like, look, there's fuck all I can do physically, so you know what, I'm just going to let it happen. And you see that with one of the others is was it him and the instructor, or him and one of the others, they're in his chambers, and then they end up getting talking, and then they end up having sex. Again, it's he's taking advantage of him because he's in a higher position, so he's using his position of power to take advantage of him. But that night that they sleep together, it is, I guess, somewhat consensual. But see, that's what's so fucked up about it. It is essential. The guy doesn't force himself upon him because he's been there. They've both been there a while. But again, it is him abusing his power as he's in a higher position. So, say like I'm 35, you're 23. I'm going to use my higher position to have my way with you. And he just allows it. Now, the monk that ends up coming in quite new and quite works his way up and impresses everyone and builds up quite a good reputation for him. He ends up, I forget the other guy's goddamn position, but he ends up basically picking him and manipulating him so he can work his way up to end up having a relationship, not like a personal intimate relationship with the shogun, but he ends up getting closer and closer, so he ends up going to becoming one of the concubines that gets to go into the bed chambers of the shogun to see if they, so he can impregnate her, so she ends up with a male baby, so they have an official, not a technical, but an official on paperwork successor to the third shogun. So in other words, she's shogun technically, in actuality, but in terms of paperwork and officially, she don't exist as shogun. So if she were to have a male child, he would be the technical, or the official fourth shogun. So they end up forming a bond. He ends up getting close to her, having a close relationship. Like they become friends in the beginning, and he's in his chambers and she turns up one day and gives him a young kitten. Yeah, she admits that she hates animals, but then, you know, the more time she goes, because she ends up getting feelings for him, so they end up starting off as a friendship, and then that obviously develops more into a physical relationship. It only becomes sexual when, you know, his time comes to sleep with the shogun, you know, to impregnate her, so they have an heir to the shogunate, you know. But the more time she keeps spending with him, word kind of gets around that, you know, he's worked his way up quite quick, and now he's developed a relationship with their lord. And, you know, she goes over, every day to his chambers so she can see him, because she falls in love with him, and then so she can also see him play with the kitten, despite her saying that she hates animals. Secretly, she loves the cat. So the guy who kind of like brought him in, as you wish, and kind of manipulates everything so he can get him to work his way up, and then basically bump him off and have him killed off. Once he's fulfilled his duties, he's then disposed of because he's no longer useful. The younger monk that he was with, he's fucked in his head. Jesus. That bastard, then he ends up quite a bit fucking sick. And he ends up quite twisted and shit. And some of the, you know, he's obviously different. And I think if they were to have stayed the way they were originally as monks, he would never have fucking lasted. I don't think he would have lasted, because you could see how different the two of them were, but he was still kind of like in a way he was kind of rebellious, and I don't think he was fully committed to his vows and his being a Buddhist. I don't think he was fully committed, and yeah, he was devoted to his master, and his title of what he become in terms of his temple was really going to bug me. I could try and look it up, but I can't be bothered. I'm trying to remember it. So he was there to serve him only, but he wasn't, because I think he says that he's not there to devote himself to the Buddha. He's there to devote himself to him. His title's really fucking bugging me. I can't think of it. For the life of me, I can't think of it. Let me see if I can try to look it up again, because it's really going to fucking bug me. So he basically admits that, like, look, even though I'm supposed to be a Buddhist, I'm not here for the Buddha. I'm here for you. And he makes that quite clear. And not just that, I think, as I said, he was never going to last. He was never going to last in the Buddhist way of life. Christ, where the hell is it? So, yeah, okay, so he comes from Kyoto to Edo Castle. No, see, where the hell is it? So, yeah, so the main one, again, I can't think of his fucking title that he has when he's when he was there as a monk. I'm still trying to find it. I should have fucking done this before I started recording this, but hey, lessons will be learned. No. Where the hell is it? No. Okay, right, again, I'm just getting myself distracted and losing it all a bit. Right, so, yeah, so if they'd have stuck, as I said, if they'd have stuck being monks, he would not have lasted long because you could see that the way he is mentally, I think he would have eventually, I guess, rebelled in a way, or probably he would have given in to, worldly temptations, whether that's possible alcohol or, like most others, he'd have given in to, his natural urges, and he'd have probably ended up breaking his vows and going off either with a young woman or going off, say, like with a prostitute. I think he would have eventually broke his vows, whether he'd have stayed or not. He'd have probably ended up leaving the temple anyway, because obviously he broke his vows. So the other guy, he develops a close bond with the shogun. And said she comes over to see him because she falls in love with him and to play with the cat. His apprentice servant, he kind of finds out from the others, and he listens in undercover, about what they're up to basically fuck him over, because it's kind of like the rule is you sleep with the shogun, it's treason and it's punishable immediately by death, because you're not supposed to taint and harm the body of the shogun, especially a female shogun. So you're not supposed to taint her body and not to taint her body and to violate her body, so it's immediately punishable by death. So he kind of finds out. So he finds out by hiding behind a bush and listening in of the plot, really to fuck over his master. He then takes the cat and goes to his chambers, uses his katana, and the way they do it is fucked, because it's like he takes this poor innocent little cat, this adorable little thing, goes to the guy's chambers, uses his katana, and fucking slaughters the cat. And the cat's just sitting there, looking at him with such love and affection in its eyes, meowing at him for attention. Yeah, okay, he apologises there. It's like, oh, forgive me. And it's like, motherfucker, this cat ain't gonna forgive you for shit. You just executed the little bastard for... I can understand why he done it, was to blackmail the other one to save his master. But don't take it out on the fucking cat. I mean, surely to God there must have been another way to do it. Yeah, it would have probably been longer and probably been too late, but the poor cat just sits there, looks at him with, like, I said, the love in his big eyes, meowing at him with a smile, and then see you later, bon voyage, thanks for coming, have a nice day, see you later in the afterlife. Kills the poor cat. The shogun comes over and it's like, where's the cat? And so the both of them are like, well, where the fuck is the cat? Haven't seen it. He comes running back in a massive panic. Oh, something terrible has happened to the cat, The honourable cat, something's happened to it. Find out, cat's been murdered. The brother whose chambers the cat's in, he's like, swear to you, weren't me, didn't do it, wasn't me. Well, it's in your room, mate. There's blood in your room, the body's in your room, and there's blood all over your sword. You know, this is clearly you, mate. No, 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 definitely not me. His master obviously knows, right? I know he knew the whole time it wasn't him, but because he was the one that done it, and you know it fucking triggered the Shogun. She was gonna kill him herself. Her new lover was like, no, can't allow you to do that again, and that's kind of what I would say is his his Buddhist values coming back out. It's like, look, I can't allow you to kill this man, irrespective of what he does, or sorry, what he done. You can't do it. And she was begging him, like, look, you kind of have two choices here, mate. Get the fuck out of the way, or I'll kill you, and then I'll kill him. When in reality, she could never have killed him because she's madly in love with him. Which you see later on is when she has to start rearing children. She's like, no matter how many men I sleep with, no matter how many kids I have, to obviously get a male successor, I will always love you. And no matter how many, because he ended up with her. I mean, okay, the guy who was framed to kill the cat, he ends up dead. I mean, does he deserve to die? Yes. I won't dispute that. Yes, he deserved to die. Was the circumstances of how he ended up dying, was it fucked up? So that had to be the way it was. You know, I don't like it. I can understand it. I just don't like it because, you know, leave the cat alone, man. Come on, that's just fucked. So as I said, she ends up saying like, look, no matter how many people I sleep with, no matter how many kids I have, I will always love you. But it's torturous for him because he's madly in love with them, both madly in love with each other. But no matter how many times he sleeps with her, and we're talking what, over like a few months, no matter how many times he lays with her in her chambers, he can't get her pregnant. So once he's reached that point in his career, if you wish, in the Ooku, where it's like, right, you know, you're going to be one of the concubines now to the Shogun. Your job now is to knock her up so we have an heir to the Shogunate, so we can have our official fourth Shogun. And he can't do that one thing that he was basically, in other words, from the very beginning brought into to do, was impregnate her. He can't do it, and over time, you don't really see it too much until much later on near the end of the series of how psychologically damaging it is, because he's so in love with her. He basically has to let her go. Yes, he changes as well, and he becomes more mature due to like actions of shit that's happened. And he's always so nice to people despite, you know, how fucked up others are. Even when people were pieces of shit to him, he's always nice to them. And that's what draws people to him, is no matter how many times you try and fuck him over, he will always care for you. It's like one of the others, I think he ended up, as he was walking along, he ended up jumping and he ended up slipping and he falls to the ground. I mean, he only falls like what? He's only what, like a foot high up probably. So he's only like what, 12 inches high up. But as he falls, the way he falls ends up basically, I think, fucking his spine. And from the lower half of his body is basically immovable, and he basically ends up paralyzed. And when you see him later on, when he's contracted red-face smallpox, once it eventually gets into not only Edu, but when it gets into Edu Castle, and he's end up taken and put in a private room so none of the others can get infected, he's like, look, everyone else gave up with me. Once I had my accident and I was basically paralysed, no one wanted fuck all to do with me. You know, he was basically an outcast because his usefulness had expired. It's like, look, there's nothing we can do with you. You're paralysed. You know, you basically need round the clock 24-hour care. What good are you to us? We need people that are fully able-bodied who can care for themselves. You can no longer do that. It's like some people when with old people is, you're of no use to me, you can't look after yourself, so I'll just basically leave you here to rot and eventually perish. And the guy wasn't, at times he was a dick to him, but even he admits that. It's like, look, when no one else kind of wanted me because I was basically disabled due to being paralysed after falling and landing on the ground awkwardly, he was deemed unworthy and useless. You still come to me. No one else would, but you would. And that's how he ends up building his reputation and how so many people flock to him as opposed to others, even kind of like others in higher positions before he works his way up, flock to him because of how generous he is. And I think that he's like that due to how he was as a monk and due to like the values that he had for when he became a Buddhist, a Buddhist, and when he spent a lot of his time at the temple, he always carries that. And he's, no matter, as I said, like, even if you're a complete asshole and a piece of shit to him, treat him like shit, whether you attack him and whatnot, he don't hold that against you. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think. He forgives you no matter what. It's like, look, you might have trespassed on him, you know, you've done evil deeds to him, but he won't hold that against you. He won't allow the hatred to consume him. He won't have the hatred, if you wish, in his heart. He moves past that and then forgives you no matter what. I think even those who like when they tried to attack him that night and tried to rape him, they end up apologising and he basically forgives them despite the heinous crime they nearly done to him. And then when he ends up in a higher position, they have no choice, and then they basically completely and utterly kiss his ass. Not physically, but you know, they end up sucking up to him because they have to. But even though what they nearly done to him, as I said, he forgives them. So and with him and the Shogun, that's what tortures him so much. Again, I forget the names of some of the characters, so if this all sounds weird and awkward because I'm not referring to any of the characters by name, one, because I'm probably going to absolutely massacre the pronunciation like I've probably already done with other things, and two, because I can't quite remember the fucking names of some of them. So he can't do the one thing he was brought into, which was to get an heir to the shogunate. And then because he knows that the shogun eventually has no choice but to bear children by so many different men, whether they get her pregnant or not, or whether the child survives or she unfortunately has a miscarriage, she has to keep doing that, and she knows that ends up like as part of her duty to get a successor and to kind of help with the male population, and he can't torture himself like that. he can't sit by and watch her sleep with so many others, getting knocked up by so many others, but then he still keeps being allowed to go back into her personal bedchambers to sleep with her, and you can see how much she's in love with him. But again, it's he can't do it because like, I love you so much, but I have to let you go because I can't, you know, father a child with you. Yeah, she can declare whoever she wants to be the father of the child. It doesn't have to be the actual biological father. You know, say if she got married, she'd go, right, my husband, he's the father of the child. There'd be a select few people that know, okay, that's not the case. He's not the biological father, but he's the legal adopted father. As far as everyone's concerned, on paperwork, officially, he's the father. And she could have done that, but he wouldn't allow it, and she knows that. And even though he has changed in his times, in ways he has changed his ways and that, deep down in his core, he's still the same. And he doesn't want to put not only himself through that pain of seeing her, despite her telling him, like, look, no matter how many kids I have, no matter how many men I sleep with, I'll always love you. He won't put himself through it, and he won't put her through it, so he begs her, like, look, free me from this torture, free me from this pain and suffering. Do not allow me anymore into your bedchambers. Do not have me come in not only to your bedchambers, but do not allow me to come in to sleep with you because I can't bear it. And she agrees, and then, but I think before she becomes a mother, you know, she's talking about things, about how, you know, she was brought in against her will, and then he just snaps her and he's like, look, you think you were the only fucking one that was brought in here? He's like, what about me? You know, I was a monk coming in from Kyoto into Edo to announce myself, and, you know, you and your people kidnapped me against my will. You know, I had so much going for me, my own family and whatnot, and you took everything from me. Yeah, he's in love with her, but he kind of puts her back in her place and gives that realization to her, like, look, you know, you think you're the only fucking one, but what, you know, you've done the exact same thing to me. Don't try and act like you're sweet, you know, you're all sweet and innocent here, love, because you're not. You know, you took everything from me. You know, you had your people force me against my will to not only break my celibacy and my vows, but I gave up everything just to come here, and for what? To live in a fucked up place and with, you know, a fucked up regime doing fucked up things. And for what? Just to eventually knock you up. It's like, it ain't worth it, sweetheart. And he puts that realization into her, and then she eventually changes, because the woman who brought her in, when she eventually passes, and because she's kind of stuck in her ways, and she's stuck kind of like at times in the old ways when the men were the dominant and the females weren't, and obviously you had females in reality with the concubines, not males, to the shogun. Once she passes, then she eventually starts allowing other people to find out, okay, the shogun is a woman. This whole time is a woman, because she ends up seeing and gets reports back on everything that, look, more and more women are taking on the traditional male roles. It changes her mentally, and then once she becomes a mother, she ends up completely changing as a person. She becomes more compassionate, more kind-hearted. Yeah, she still ends up brutal, but, you know, it's in your blood. And she starts starts letting it be known a bit more and more and more, letting more and more people know that, okay, actually, the shogun isn't a man, it's a woman. Because when you have other lords turn up, like other feudal lords and that turn up, they have their daughters disguised as men with male names. And one of them, like, it's like, okay, look, this is my quote unquote son. Here's another lord and his quote unquote son. And when they walk off, it's like, yeah, you know that's not his son, right? So what do you mean? It's like, oh, that's clearly his fucking daughter. So it's like, Jesus, can some of you like not really be? You can use not really be that stupid. You don't seem to realise it. These so-called men are actually fucking females. I mean, at times, yeah, it is hard to identify, especially when you have males who have quite feminine features. It can be quite hard to tell them apart, or you have females that will have male features, and when they disguise themselves as males, it's very hard to distinguish them. But then once the one who brought her in, once she passes, then it's like, right, okay, bring me all the lords, bring them straight to the castle, so she can address them and formally announce herself not only as shogun but a female shogun. And she lets them all know, look, all of you heads of the household, heads of businesses, farms, land, whatnot, all you lords and all that, including myself in the shogunate as the shogun, we're only placeholders. We're incumbent, if you wish. We're here in name, but we're not here in title. Does that make sense? We have the titles and all that, and we have the power, but on paperwork we don't exist. And they all accept that. Yeah, she can be quite brutal, but even some of the locals in the villages, they was like, ever since she's come out and announced herself as shogun, but a female shogun, the others are saying that, she's actually making life better, especially for the farmers, she makes life better, and all the heads of businesses, all the lords and that, stop dressing up as men and end up dressing up as women. And they can, in other words, be themselves, and she lets it known. I mean, it doesn't really say how how old was she when she died? She was 29, so she dies at a young age, but she ends up with 2 kids, but both her, if you wish, successors are both females, so she has no male heir to the shogunate. But then she has it changed, saying look, my firstborn, my daughter, when I die, she will officially be the 4th shogun. So you've had 3 males, and now you're going to have a first female. You don't like it, tough shit. There's no one here to basically stop her. The past is the past, and you do see over time is that it goes from 1 in 5 men to women ratio, then it stabilizes, and it goes to 1 in 4, and then stabilizes at that. And as I said, I've probably missed bits and pieces, but that's predominantly it. Overall, fantastic fucking show. Fantastic. And I like and they've done the alternative history very well. Whereas normally everything's male dominated, but it shows you how things would be. Again, it's not on a global scale. You take it a small section of society, in a small, say, town, city like Edu, where it's all females, all the females are in charge, and how life would be. But make no mistake, just because the females are running everything doesn't make them any more different to men. And that's what you see with the shogun. She might be a woman, but fuck me, she can be just as brutal as a man. And that's what I think people do forget is oh, people think, oh, but you know, things would be completely different, things might be better, you know, if women were in charge. To an extent that is true, but fuck me, you give them a lot of power. You know, if we're talking unrivaled power, not really absolute power, but yes, they can. There would be obviously stark differences between a male dominated society and a female dominated society. But as I said, you give them the power, especially when it's absolute power, they will succumb to it, and it will corrupt them. It will fuck them psychologically, and they will be just as brutal. And at times, which has been evident throughout real life history, is female rulers can be just as bad, if not worse, than male rulers, because as I said, power corrupts anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. You know, you could take, say, the most humble of people, the most religious of people. You know, I'll take it for argument's sake and a hypothetical. You know, you take the Pope, you know, one of the most religious figures on the planet. You give him absolute power when no one can fucking challenge him, kind of like how the church used to be. You give him absolute power like he's a Roman emperor, it's going to fucking corrupt him. No matter how religious you are, absolute power will corrupt you. Again, if it was a female, say, again, I'll use Cleopatra as an example, you give her absolute power, eventually it will corrupt her, and she could end up as a brutal murderer. Again, my knowledge on her is very, very minuscule, so I'm not even gonna get into that. But she'd be an example of you know, a big female ruler. You give them absolute power, it's gonna corrupt them, and they could very, very easily end up into a murderous tyrant. So power doesn't give a shit whether you know, if you've got a fucking dick or not. Doesn't give a shit. Male, female, doesn't care. It will corrupt you, especially if it's absolute power. Even if it's not absolute power, it can still go to people's heads. You know, say if it's not like where you're an emperor, or in terms of Egypt, a pharaoh, or if you know, you could just be an authoritarian ruler. You know, you could end up as a dictator. It will corrupt you because you've practically got absolute power. It will destroy you. And that's what it kind of shows you, is even though she's a woman and she's shogun, she can be at times quite brutal, heartless, and just as much of a monster as a man could be. And as I said, that's, I think, what at times some people do forget is, make no mistake about it, either sex, it will destroy them eventually. Because the more power they, or say the more power they get, the more power they want until it consumes them. And then eventually it darkens them, corrupts them, and then it ends up as their downfall, to where eventually, more than likely, as it happens, is they're overthrown and brutally murdered. But, you know, that's life. But as an overall, fantastic show, great depiction of alternative history and shows how things could be in a different light, so to speak, as I said, where it's more of a female dominated society than male dominated, and I think it does a good job of showing the differences in terms of what men can do and what men can't do, what women can do and what women can't do. And I think I'll leave it at that and call it a day.